Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. I'm on Chandos Place in London, and behind me is the building where Charles Dickens worked from 1824 into 1825. So Dickens was born in Portsmouth, well, very near Portsmouth actually, in 1812. So Portsmouth is on the English Channel. It's the headquarters of the Royal Navy, and his father was an administrator of the Royal Navy, not an officer. So they were quite well off, but his father had a drinking problem, and his father's dipsomania caused him to get demoted, to lose his job, and to move from a large house to a small one, and then to an even smaller one, and finally their father was bankrupt. Debt was a criminal matter in those days. They moved to London. They were in Camden Town, which is a bit north of here, and Charles Dickens was one of several siblings, but so his father was imprisoned in Marshalsea Prison, which is south of the River Thames. It no longer stands. There are a few stones to show where it was, but the family was allowed to go and visit him and spend several hours with him on a Sunday. So Charles was close to one of his sisters, Frances, who managed to attend the Royal Academy of Music. I'm not sure how she managed to do that, presumably a scholarship, because there's no way they could have afforded it. So Charles Dickens was a voracious reader and someone of a prodigious intelligence, but he had to leave school at the age of 12, and some people didn't get to go to school at all in those days, and he had to get a job. So he worked at this boot polish factory, or boot black as we'd say in those days, but not all boots are black. Arranging the tins or putting them in boxes, something like that. It wasn't always here. The warehouse where he worked next to the factory, it was about a quarter of a mile that away, down by the River Thames near Charing Cross Station. Doesn't it, kind of the site that it is now Charing Cross Station. Remember, this was right before the train was invented that he was doing that. But then the warehouse was relocated to this spot here, which is a very chic area now, Covent Garden. There are loads of upper class restaurants, pricey boutiques and so on. So he and mostly boys about his own age were engaged in this work, and there were large windows and passers-by could see them, and they liked to gawk in. So Charles Dickens, he read a lot of these novels about lovable rogues, so things that had been popular in the 18th century, but there were not many working class characters in fiction, but he started to people the pages of his stories with working class people. He got out of this and he managed to work as a journalist, edited a magazine for about 20 years, sort of middle brow, and acquired a larger and larger readership. So he published 20 novels, he's published hundreds of stories. And when he was here, he was, first of all, he was lodging with this older man who was corpulent but kindly, and later his father's out of prison. They say that Mrs. Royland, so as part of his conditions being let out. His father's let out because Charles Dickens' great aunt died, leaving John Dickens, that's Charles's father, a legacy of something like £450, which was a huge sum back then, enough to settle his debts, but he didn't survive very long. So Charles Dickens, I won't tell you the rest of the story, I've told it elsewhere, but in the mid-19th century, the most widely read person in the world, because of course, you know, English is one of the major languages, I might say, but more people spoke Chinese. But of course, in most countries in the 19th century, most people were illiterate. Majority literacy is actually a very new thing. I think it was Prussia, one of the first countries, maybe the first country, to have compulsory schooling, and that was in the 18th century. Prussia, part of Germany. This country didn't get until 1870, again, one of the most advanced countries. So he died in, he died that year, if I got it right, he died in 1870, I think. Alright, that's just a little bit about the privation that Charles Dickens went through in his childhood, gave him some sympathy to the underdog, and made sure that his novels are usually a comment on society, being a campaigning journalist, drawing attention to penury, to cruelty and suffering. That's enough from me. Toodaloo.